down that camera and strap in. It's time for a new episode of TogChat Live. It's an open mic night for photographers. Get ready for 60 minutes of your photography questions in real time with answers from your host, Joe Edelman.
Hey gang, how you doing? I hope that you are all still there. I apologize. I am in the middle of a massive thunderstorm right now. So sure enough, I no sooner hit start and the power flickered, everything reset. So I'm back for now. Fingers crossed that Mother Nature is gonna let me get through this. So hopefully you guys let me know if you are in the chat, if you are able to see me and hear me and you're receiving everything okay. From what it says on my end, we're working. So I hope that you guys are getting this and I hope we're going to be able to get through a whole hour. So, hey, listen, this is TogChat episode number 70. Thank you guys for coming out on a Monday night and for spending the evening with me. It is greatly appreciated. So, as you know, over the last couple of weeks, we've been kind of tweaking and modifying the format a little bit. And basically, we're going to start out each TogChat episode with kind of a little discussion, a little chat, a little lesson. And then from there, we're going to get into our Q&A. So that being said, you guys can go ahead and start loading questions into that Q&A. And tonight, I decided to do it a little bit differently. So last week, of course, I came kind of with an agenda prepared, and I wanted to talk to you guys about the idea of, can't we all just get along, right? Well, that obviously got a good discussion going. It's gotten some great comments this past week, so I thank you guys for all that. So tonight, while I was setting up, for those of you that don't know, I usually wind up in the chat room about 45 minutes before the start of TogChat. So a couple people were here tonight, and one of my viewers posted a really good kind of thoughtful question. And I thought, you know what? Forget what I was going to talk about tonight. I want to discuss this because it's something that's actually really near and dear to my heart, and it's something that I'm passionate about. So the question is, and this is our topic for tonight, what do you think is the biggest obstacle for today's photographers? And when I first saw the question, it was kind of like, and then I realized, you know what? This is actually a great topic. So I've been doing this YouTube thing full time now for just over a year. It's going really well. I'm loving it. You guys are wonderful. But I will admit, and a lot of you know this, there are certain questions, certain topics that I have probably answered more times in the last year than I've ever even considered in my entire career. And to the point that they kind of frustrate me at times, which, I shouldn't be frustrated because I'm fortunate enough and lucky enough to be able to do this. But I've realized over time that they frustrate me because people are seeking information and trying to learn in the wrong ways. So here is my short answer and then long answer to the question, what do I think is the biggest obstacle for today's photographers? And it may not be what you're expecting. I think the biggest obstacle for today's photographers is simply a matter of too much information. Yes, too much. Too many YouTube photographers, too many internet websites, just too many. There's too much. I often say that I wish I had Google and YouTube when I was a kid and I was learning photography, because literally I had to go to the library and check out books that were like thick. They were like bigger than the Bible. And the problem was, this was in the early to mid 1970s. And all of those books were written like in the 1950s. And all the pictures in them were black and white. And they were horrible. Everything was very formal. It was all about the rules. But my options for learning were checking out those books and reading them, trying to find someone that would literally let me hang around and truly sweep floors and clean up after them to watch them work, and most importantly, taking pictures. Lots and lots of really crappy pictures. Pictures that I could learn from. Pictures that we're creating, what you guys hear me refer to frequently is my visual database, my database of experiences of what happens if you use this aperture compared to what happens if you use this aperture, or what's going to happen if you use this shutter speed compared to what happens if you use that shutter speed. That's how I learned. And for the longest time, I felt, wow, all this YouTube stuff and Google, this is awesome. But here's the problem. The problem is that I find photographers today, they're lazy. You guys, you're lazy. You know, if you can tell me, now here, just to show you how much I'm committed to this concept, folks, okay? If you can tell me that you're using your camera as much as you should be, if you can tell me that you are sincerely making concerted effort because you want to learn, you want to improve, that you are sincerely making a concerted effort to pick up that camera and use it on a regular basis and study your images and learn before you go looking for resource material and information, then please keep watching. If you're not doing that, honestly, you need to get off of YouTube. Yes. You need to stop watching this video. You need to stop watching most of my videos. You need to stop watching all the other YouTubers. You need to put Google away. And you need to go take pictures. I mean, that's really the key. So, you know, I think that it's great that technology has advanced to the point that almost anyone can take a half-decent picture. You know, we can pick up the phone, take a half-decent picture with no knowledge, with no ability or you know, concept of what makes good composition or anything like that. The technology has advanced to that point, and that's wonderful. I love that. I love the fact that it opens photography up to more people. And you guys, you have to understand, whether you're trying to be a professional photographer or you wanted to shoot for fun, the fact that photography is accessible to more people, and the fact that the equipment is better, and even for that matter, less expensive on scale, that's all great stuff. Where does it say that photography should only be available to a few people? Where does it say that only a few people should be able to enjoy this process of recording images and being creative and having that creative outlet? Everybody should be able to enjoy that if they want. So it doesn't bother me that more people are photographers than ever before. I think that's great. And the only people, folks, come on, we all know this. The only people that complain about that are the lazy professional, and I use that one in big air quotes, photographers that just want to be able to have people hand them money for doing less than stellar work without having to go out and try and really put in effort and time to market themselves. So that's how I see it, guys. I think this is a great question. I think it's something that, you know, all of you need to be aware of, that really we have fewer obstacles than ever. Now, for those of you that are really, really serious about maybe making a career out of photography, I will go ahead and turn the corner a little bit with that thought and say that indeed, one of the biggest challenges I think that professionals have today is making their work stand out. Now, we have to qualify that a little bit. Anybody can become a professional photographer. Essentially, decide, that's it, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to, you know, work my butt off, I'm going to find clients, I'm going to get people to pay me to take pictures. I am now a professional photographer. Whether they're making a lot of money or a little money, they're working professionally. And we're not going to get into the debate over professional quality or caliber. We're going to go ahead and we're going to, for the sake of this conversation, because you know I've done a video about what makes a professional photographer, and you know my thoughts on that. And if you haven't watched it, you need to go watch it. But for the sake of this conversation, we're going to use the definition of professional based on income and title, okay? That being said, the biggest obstacle that these people face is being able to make themselves stand out in the crowd, because there is a crowd. And indeed, compared to 30 years ago or 40 years ago when I got started, it's a bigger crowd. But once again, that still doesn't make it bad. I don't see that as being a problem. I just see it as being a different challenge. Today's photographers, if we're talking about becoming professional, today's photographers have to learn marketing. They have to learn business if they truly want to be successful. If you look at any professional photographer who you admire, whose work that you look up to, that you feel is successful, part of the reason why they're making really good money is they're really good at social media. They are really good at running a business. They have taken the time to either take classes or to study the principles behind making money, running a business, marketing, and advertising. You guys have heard me use the analogy many, many times over that I think professional photographers are some of the dumbest people in the world. None of us, not one, you cannot find me a professional photographer who is paying their bills with a camera, who decided at some point, sitting in their living room, I want to be a professional photographer, even though I've never taken a picture before in my life. I think I'll go buy a camera and I'll be a professional photographer. No. We all start out with a camera because we think it would be fun. Maybe we started on our phones and we graduated to a DSLR or a mirrorless camera. But from there, somewhere along the lines, we got passionate about the process. We got hooked. We were bitten by the bug. But then down the road, we all got stupid. We had this dumb idea where we thought, hey, and it always shows up in one of two ways. It's either, wouldn't it be cool if I could simply pay my bills with this thing, quit my day job, and do this full time? Or the other version is, which is not quite as bad, but still bad, wouldn't it be cool if I could start making money with this camera so that I could buy more gear? The minute you make either one of those decisions, the rules change. And a lot of the fun goes away. And then it becomes hard work to keep recreating the fun. Because the minute you make that decision, you have to pay attention to marketing. You have to pay attention to business. All of those things are crucially important. So I hope that helps. Those would be my thoughts on the biggest obstacles for today's photographers. So again, gang, I've got to thank you guys for coming out here on a Monday night. I mean, I've got a ton of people here tonight. This is great. Trevor, Alonzo, Dave, Troy Hall. It looks like you got here late, Troy, but that's okay. Linda's here from the UK, Ram Photography. Amanda, Gajan, Art, Brent, Dumaris, how are you? Trevor, April's here. Awesome. It is great to see all you guys. Thank you. So a couple of pieces of business. You know, every one of these shows, I'm going to ask you, please take a second. Make sure you're following me on social media, all that good stuff. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Those are the ones where I'm most active. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe. I topped out 85,000 subscribers this week. I'm getting close to that 100,000 mark. When I get to that 100,000 mark, what do I get? I get a little silver play button from YouTube. But more importantly, there's actually a lot of cool stuff that starts to happen at 100,000 in all levels. Channels, once they hit 100,000, they tend to pick up subscribers at a much faster clip, which means they kind of get a boost and they grow a little bit faster. Also, from the standpoint of bringing on sponsorships and speaking engagements and that type of stuff, that 100,000 sounds a lot cooler than 85,000, so it brings in more of that stuff. So believe me, your subscriptions, they are really, really appreciated, and they do make a difference. Obviously, a thumbs up on the video would be greatly appreciated, especially since I am risking life and limb sitting here in the middle of a thunderstorm in Pennsylvania to talk to you guys tonight, okay? And comments are always appreciated. So a couple more things here for you guys really, really quick. Since I know you folks follow me, since I know you all like gear, you guys know that I recently became a light leader with PhotoFlex, which is an awesome honor. I don't get paid. I don't make any money for it. It's something that literally I've used their gear from the beginning. I love their stuff. It is durable. It is well put together. It is simple to use. It doesn't come with gimmicky bells and whistles. This is like heavy duty, hardcore workhouse lighting modifier stuff. They run on their Facebook page a weekly contest, okay? They call it the Share Your Lighting Contest. And I'm going to give you guys the link here in the chat window to the PhotoFlex Facebook page. That way you can go and, number one, show them some love, like the page. But number two, I want to see you guys, if you follow me, submit your photos. I'm really excited to say that this set of photos right here was submitted by a photographer who's a member of my Facebook group. But here's the cool part. They give away prizes every week. And your pictures don't have to be done with PhotoFlex gear. So what do you got to lose? You email your images to marketing@promarkbrands.com. You have to send them at least 2 images. The one, of course, is the finished image. The other one is the behind the scenes image. For those of you that maybe have not been shooting behind the scenes, you need to start for 2 reasons. 1, you can win prizes from PhotoFlex. 2, and actually more importantly, it's always good to kind of have that visual reminder of how did you set up the shot. It can come in very handy later if you want to try and replicate something. So I really hope to see more of my followers and subscribers and Facebook group members winning this contest in the future. I know that you guys are generating work that will definitely win this contest on an ongoing basis. So I would really like to see you guys get your stuff out there, okay? They announce the winners every Wednesday. And I think they take the entries pretty much like right up to the last minute. So even if you were to submit tomorrow for this week, you probably still have a shot at this week's contest. Another quick little piece of business. A lot of you that have been following me for a while know that I love this software that comes from Germany. It's called Set-A-Light 3D. This is the software that I use frequently in my videos when I'm showing the lighting diagrams. They are running a summer special right now. So they've got a sale on their stuff. It ends tonight. But here's the upside to this whole thing, gang. Not only is it on sale, but I am going to give you a coupon code. I'm going to paste it in the chat window here. That's the coupon code. We're going to do this backwards. Now I'll give you the link to their website. Sorry about that. Here's the link to their website. So if you purchase it before midnight tonight, it ends on July 24th. You can see it there on the screen right now. You get the sale price plus an additional 20% off. There are 2 versions of the software. There's the Set-A-Light 3D Basic and the Set-A-Light 3D Studio. Most of you only need the Basic, which means this software is dirt cheap, okay? Literally. Hey, look at that good-looking guy down at the bottom there. Woo, how about that? Anyway, the reason why I say most of you only need the Basic is because the big difference is with the Studio, and you should read the comparisons, but with the Studio version, you can export PDF files and kind of customize, and essentially you could create a book of all your lighting stuff if you want. The Set-A-Light 3D Basic is literally, for practicing and for planning, and it's an awesome, awesome utility, okay? LP Pondo, great class at NECC. Awesome. You were at my NECC class and you're still talking to me. That's a really cool thing. Great. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. NECC, it was a great event. That's where I was a week ago or so. And absolutely loved going up there. I'm keeping my fingers crossed they'll have me back again next year. This was my 2nd year in a row, so I don't know if I'll be back next year. Oftentimes they put a break in between, so we'll see. Mr. Powell, does it run on Mac? It does run on Mac, absolutely, okay? And then one more thing I want to show you guys is a little challenge, and then we're diving into the Q&A because the questions, I've got a bunch here from early on, and I know a lot of you guys are still throwing some questions in here, but pretty much for this last year that I have been doing this YouTube thing, I have been pushing the idea of practice and practice and practice. And I talk about it all the time. It comes up during, interviews that I do, everything. And so a couple of weeks ago, I think it was just by chance, but I had a couple people essentially call me out. Like, come on, do you really take pictures every day? How do you possibly shoot every day? And I've made it clear every time I talk about it, I'm not saying that I'm in the studio shooting a model or shooting portrait or something like that every single day. God, no. In fact, now that I'm teaching full-time on YouTube, I'm doing that less than I used to when I was paying my bills that way. But for years now, literally years now, I have made it a point every single day to do a photo. And believe me, I want to be clear, I suck at those 365-day-a-year, photo challenge things. I've started them, I've tried them, and I fail miserably. But, I've realized that I have really gotten into the habit. I do it every day. Is there ever a day that I skip? Occasionally. But more often than not, I'm creating more than one photo a day. So I feel good. It makes up for it. So what I started to do is I set up, this was about a month and a half ago, I set up a separate Instagram account. You can see it's called Joe Edelman's iPhone. Joe.Edelman's iPhone. And I thought, okay, you know what? Since people are going to call me out, I'm going to show them and share what I'm doing with my iPhone. So I'm letting you guys know about it so that, number one, you can check it out. I would love to have the follows, and likes and all that good stuff is always fun. But two, just so that you can also see that being a good photographer, and more importantly, being passionate about photography, doesn't mean picking up your expensive camera, doesn't mean using tons of gear. These photos, I swear to you, are all taken with an iPhone 7S, except for some of the ones that are archived. And I label them as archive. They may be from an iPhone 6S or a 6. And there's even one or two pictures that I have not posted yet, but I will post, that go all the way back to an iPhone 4. So these are shots that I am doing on a day-to-day basis. It takes me moments a day. Even some, so just so you know, these are actually studio shots right here that were done with an iPhone. I'm not going to tell you how they were done. You can guess if you want, but I will be doing a video. So they're actually nudes. They're fine art nudes. They meet the terms of service, but there will be a video coming shortly that will tell you all about that. But those two shots were actually done with an iPhone. So everything that goes on this channel is Joe Edelman's iPhone. So I wanted to share that with you guys just to make it clear. I really do it. I really take pictures every day. It's part of my mindset. Sometimes, it's just my puppies in the house. Other times it might be, while I'm on the dog walk. Amanda's asking, do I use any editing apps for the shots taken on your phone? I do. I have quite a few editing apps on my phone. Honestly, I probably have about 15 or 20 along the way here at some point because I'll try free ones out, and there's only a few that I buy. But I will tell you this, my number one, and I'm going to do a video shortly about shooting with the iPhone just to share what I do, but my number one editing app is Snapseed. So that means that just like the folks that like the Nick collection, I am probably going to be in a situation sometime in the next year or so where I'm looking for a new favorite editing app. I do know that Lightroom for mobile has just made some hardcore upgrades. I have not had a chance to play with it yet. So it's very possible I may just wind up going ahead and getting the whole Lightroom mobile setup with my iPhone and my iPad, which I have not used to this date. But for now, Snapseed is my go-to editor. And then I'll use the others for maybe some certain special effects or things like that that they have along the way. But the overwhelming majority of my post-processing for my iPhone is done with Snapseed. So again, I wanted to share that with you guys, let you know about it. And hopefully you'll check that profile out. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna switch over here to a different screen, and that way you guys can see the chat window nice and big. And I'm gonna scroll back here a little ways because I know that there were a bunch of questions that went up earlier, and you guys again start throwing in your questions. By the way, if you've got a question that you absolutely need answered tonight, I'm gonna try and get through everybody's questions before we run out of time. I got a good 30 minutes here, and you guys know how I am about finishing on time, right? But if you've got a question that you've got to get answered tonight, that little $ sign down in the bottom left-hand corner of your chat screen, you can see it down there. There's, actually, I'm moving my mouse over, but I just realized you're not going to be able to see it. So, sorry, I will just put that back. If you do a super chat, which is a donation of anywhere from $1 on up, I will answer your question for sure, even if I have to stay here late, okay? So, Trevor had a question here. From recent experience, too many photographers are turning up on shoots with very expensive kit, but without basic knowledge of how to use it. Seem to think the more you spend, the better you will be. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of an ongoing thing in the industry. I hate to make it sound like it's an industry problem, Trevor. I think it's really more of it's a people problem, right? People with disposable income, if they like good things, they're going to go spend the money. They tend to think it's going to make their work better. It doesn't. You guys hear me talk all the time, even when people ask me for recommendations like about lighting and speed lights. I talk about the idea of identify the system that you want to work with and buy one. Learn how to use it. Learn how to use it inside out and backwards and exhaust it. Then add a second one and so on. You really should do the same with your camera gear. Decide what system you want to get into. Doesn't matter. If you want to be a Sony person, use Sony. If you want Canon, if you're going to stick with Nikon, whatever, pick your system and then start to build your system accordingly. Always look forward, meaning if you're starting with cameras, if you're going to start with an APS-C camera, you want to look forward with the idea that potentially you're going to want to go full frame. the way the technology is going, we may get to the point that APS-C makes it so that you don't need to go full frame. For a lot of people, they don't need to go full frame. So all that being said, these are the things you consider first. Then you start purchasing equipment and adding to it. Steve McCarthy, low light photography like receptions, etc. Underexpose the ambient by one stop and use flash. Should it be ETTL or manual? Go up over 3200 ISO, gel or not gel, automatic white balance. Steve, the best and most sincere and honest answer I can give you. You ready? Write this down. It depends. There's the answer. Steve, it's going to depend on a lot of things. It's going to depend on what the ambient light is. Somebody else asked a question earlier about shooting in a wedding reception where it was all pink lighting from a DJ. I will say, based on the things you asked, I wouldn't gel. I like the idea of being able to mix light sources. So potentially using my strobe, either direct flash if I'm able to mount them way off in the distance, like off in a corner, or on a bounce, if I have to work up close, bounce with a fill card. I love the idea of letting the ambient go warm in all different colors and then having the color balance on my subjects be daylight coming from the strobe. So I wouldn't gel them. Going up over 3200 ISO, it depends on your camera, man. I mean, that's honestly the best answer I can give you. There are a lot of cameras today that 3200 is no big deal. And even then, it's not a question of, is it bad to go over that ISO? It's a question of, what is the final output going to be in your images? And will a little bit of noise hurt them? The fact that noise exists is not the issue. The issue is, what's the final output going to be? And are you going to see the noise? Is it going to be destructive to your image as it's needed? I mean, yeah, in a perfect world, every image we shoot for every purpose should be able to look good if it's 8 stories tall on the side of a building in Times Square. But the reality of it is the overwhelming majority of pictures that all of us shoot are never going to see the side of an 8-story tall building in Times Square. So it's not an issue. So that's kind of how I would approach that, okay? Steve McCarthy, I am going to do a workflow video a little bit later this year. It will not involve Lightroom because I don't use Lightroom. But as part of doing that workflow video, I will be able to make it very clear for all of you why I don't use Lightroom. And it's nothing against Lightroom. Lightroom, for most of you, is the smartest program that you could actually be doing. Steve, thank you so much, man. I really, really appreciate the super chat. But for me, I already had a great system set up long before Lightroom came along, so I didn't need the image management aspects of Lightroom. And so as a result of that, the whole idea of having to import, export, all that, honestly, that was just kind of annoying for me. So that's why I don't use it. But that's the only reason I don't use it, okay? So let's see. Jarek, what were the biggest obstacles? What was the most difficult in your career? How did you overcome it? Wow, Jarek, you know what? If it's okay with you, I'm gonna sit tight on that one because that might make a cool video at some point. So, and I have a feeling it's not Casper, so I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name wrong here. But moving from landscapes to portraits, still beginner. Is there any thorough tutorial on post-processing? I keep messing it up. So I'm going to give you 2 answers because I know the minute I said that now, there's going to be a whole bunch of people weigh in with, this guy has the best tutorials and this guy has the best. I am a big fan, so since I know a lot of people are going to start naming YouTubers, I'm going to put mine at the top of the list first. I'm a big fan of Phlearn. That's Phlearn. Aaron Nace is the photographer that does that. Stuff is just damn good, period. He breaks it down pretty simple. So, yeah, I think if I were going to YouTube looking to learn Photoshop techniques, I would probably go to his first. That being said, Casper, I'm going to go back to the comments I made before about the biggest obstacle that photographers are facing. Don't spend too much time on the tutorials. I'm essentially self-taught with Photoshop. I've been doing it now for 20 years. I've been working with Photoshop. So, you got to put in the time. You can watch, and gang, this applies to all this stuff. It applies to the shooting, the lighting, you name it. You can watch all the tutorials in the world. If you don't get out there and use that knowledge and put that information to work, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So let's see. James Brown, I'm glad to hear the website's coming along good. That's awesome. I will look forward to seeing it. James is one of my Patreon members. In fact, by the way, gang, if you are not a member of Patreon and not follow me on Patreon, let me just give you a little heads up here. The link is in the description below the video. You can also see it there on the screen. You can support me on Patreon for as little as $1 per month. That's $12 a year, gang. And it actually makes a big difference. I'm not doing one of those Patreon programs where I'm asking people to spend, $20, $30, $40, $50 a month and then promising them all kind of crazy stuff. I'm doing a Patreon program where the biggest thing that we do, which is a lot of fun, every Friday evening, we use the Zoom room technology, and the patrons, we all get together and we chat. And each week we talk about different things. So the reason James mentioned his website is that last week he had some questions about his website that he was really anxious to get answered because he's looking to remodify it. And honestly, he kind of got a butt kicking from me. But we went through his website and we took it apart, put it back together again, and gave him a plan. Say, this is what you've got to fix to get this website to work for you. Other times, we've talked about roller derby pictures because we had a Patreon member who's shooting roller derby and was trying to light these indoor arenas, so we solved those problems. So it's really cool basically for us to be able to sit down, talk face to face. We all get to use our webcams and microphones. We get to know each other a little bit. But it's a very unstructured format in the sense that we all show up on Friday nights and we decide, hey, what are we going to talk about tonight? And that's what we dig into. And I share information. Other people in the group share information. So it's a lot of fun. And there's some other benefits which you can read about there. I don't want to give you any longer of a commercial. So Roderick, I saw this one go before, Roderick, and I thought, okay, I'm going to come back because this is going to get people really going here. Joe, would you be willing to name the one YouTube photography guru whose advice you think we should never follow? Wow. Okay, so already a lot of you are placing bets who I'm going to say. So let's put it out there that a lot of you think I'm going to pick on Jason Lanier, okay? Because I have taken exception to some of the things that he does while teaching. But I want to be clear, and this is going to be a really politically correct answer, and it's not because I'm trying to be politically correct. I'm really being straight with you. Part of the challenge, and this goes back to my very first discussion of the evening, with all this information that we have, you can't learn well from all of them. I mean, gang, Jason Lanier's got a much bigger following than I do. Even the Angry Photographer has a bigger following than I do. So, number one of the great things about having all of these resources available to you is the only thing that determines who is the best for you is who can you relate to, who can you connect to, who is able to really make things understandable for you. Randy, thank you so much, man. I really, really appreciate the super chat. Thank you. James, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Steve, oh gosh, where was I? I missed all these super chats. Steve, I'm going to get your super chat here in just a second. So the worst YouTuber that you could listen to is one that you disagree with, one that you don't really feel that you're learning things from, etc. Because as much as I disagree with some of the things that Jason Lanier does, or even, Ken Wheeler, the Angry Photographer, him and I, we've got this little bromance thing going on, but at the same time, there are things that he talks about that I don't agree with. And that's okay. Because each of us is sharing, Jason, Ken Wheeler, and myself, we're sharing from our experiences. So none of us is wrong in what we're doing. It's all a matter of what has worked for us. And so the people that are going to follow us are people that can connect with what we're doing and who are able to learn the best for it. So sorry, gang. I know that some of you were hoping I'd really say something like massively controversial and start a big fire, but no. And besides, why would I benefit from doing that? I'll tell you straight up. This YouTube thing, for the YouTube, I'll use your word, gurus, the ones that are putting out videos on a weekly basis, it's a boatload of work to build a business around it. Because when, there's one simple reality. the people that are they're doing, you know, the bigger channels and the channels that grow. So we're talking the Tony and Chelsea Northrops, the Jared Poland, the Jason Laniers, the Ted Forbes, Ken Wheeler, myself, Manny Ortiz, who's, you know, probably at the bottom of that list, but growing really rapidly. And Manny's probably going to surpass me because Manny's a really likable guy, and he's got this whole cinematography, you know, cinematic style with the way he does his videos. They're great to watch. The point is, none of those names that I just mentioned are shooting full-time as photographers. Not a one. Every single one of them has kind of slid their business model over to where they are not making a living on YouTube. I don't make a living on YouTube. YouTube drives about 20% of my income. Excuse me. YouTube provides about 20% of my income. It drives 99% of my income. Okay? So that being said, all these photographers that are doing the guru thing on YouTube, they have lots of experience. They do still shoot, but they have expanded their business model to include teaching. That's the biggest thing, teaching. In the case of like Tony and Chelsea Northrop, it includes books and all that kind of stuff. And believe me, you're going to see some stuff for sale from me later this year, going into 2018 as well. Learning materials, education materials, that kind of stuff. It's all part of how you sustain it when you're putting out free content all the time. So there's really no such thing as a bad one. And I have mad respect for all the people that do it. So even though, yes, I disagree with some of the things Jason Lanier does, like shooting with one hand in his pocket or holding a reflector underneath somebody on the beach, bottom line, I know how hard he's working. And I know that he's got a portfolio and a resume that shows he knows what he's talking about, okay? But we disagree on style and technique on certain things. That's cool. Not a problem. All right. So, Steve, you had a question here. Do I have any advice for shooting at a New York Renaissance Fair? I'm looking to take better photos than I have there in the past. Well, so a couple of things, Steve. Number one, I would say shallow depth of field is frequently going to be your best friend because oftentimes at those Renaissance fairs, obviously you've got crowds. It's not always easy to isolate people on backgrounds because, you know, you don't want, you know, the fair maiden standing there with a little kid licking an ice cream cone in the background. That's going to be pretty boring unless, of course, there's some funny contrast between the two. So shallow depth of field is definitely going to be your biggest fan. Keeping that in mind, I didn't just tell you to shoot everything at 1.8. That is not what I'm suggesting. What I am suggesting is, in a lot of cases, longer lenses are going to be very, very helpful. Shooting at apertures maybe like f4, f4.5, 5.6, somewhere in there. That's not to say don't use wide angles at all, because if you have a scenario where you are able to manage the background, meaning you're not going to have modern looking people in the background of the shot, a wide angle lens forces you to get very close to your subjects so that when you look at that picture, it makes you feel as if you are in the scene. So understand that from a storytelling perspective, because that's, in a scenario like this, Steve, this is how you're going to use your lenses. Your lenses are going to help you tell the story. The telephoto lenses allow you to get shots of things that are at a distance and isolate those things, especially when you've got busy backgrounds and other obstacles. The wide angle lenses allow you to put the viewer of your photographs into the story to make them feel as if they were there. So the other piece is make sure you're mixing up between the wide angle and the telephoto and go to the extremes, whatever you have available. Make sure you're using the widest lens that you own and make sure you're using the longest lens that you own and really mix it up. That would be my advice there. But definitely that would be step one. Step two, depending on your skill level, Steve. So you guys know I'm all about manual. But if you really know what you're doing and you're at an intermediate level, then I would say to consider going with aperture priority and using your exposure compensation dials, depending on your camera. Some cameras make that more convenient than others. You know, if you've got a camera where you got to go through menu settings to do the exposure compensation, forget that. Forget everything I just said. Stick with manual. If you have a camera where you can easily, like one button and run the dial and change your exposure compensations, then in a situation like this, aperture priority automatic can be very, very valuable as long as you're always paying attention. Meaning, that doesn't mean put it on aperture priority and forget about it. You guys have heard me say, auto, it's the 4-letter word for forget about it. You can't forget about it. Every single frame, you have to be making an exposure decision, even if you're on aperture priority automatic. And that exposure decision, you are controlling it with your plus and minus exposure compensations if you do that, okay? James and Randy, I said thank you guys very much. So, all right, I'm all the way down the end here. Let's move back up here. Richard, I look at Jason. Yeah, I mean, honestly, Richard, they're all great people in their own right. They all have their shtick. They all have their area of expertise. They all have their things that they do, and some people are going to like it. Some people don't. Don Smith, I appreciate you think I'm a likable guy too. Believe me, I don't have my head in the sand. There are people that I realize I just annoy the crap out of. That's people. That's the way it works. And that's okay. So let's see. Where are we at here? Adam Barr, what's the one most important thing one needs to do when aspiring for a photography career? Shoot like hell. Don't put your camera down. Shoot and shoot and shoot. Don't be afraid to break stuff, Adam. And when I say break stuff, I don't mean the camera. I just mean don't be afraid to take bad pictures. But look at your bad pictures and solve the problem. Figure out why. That's when people should be coming to YouTube. They should be out there taking a whole boatload of bad pictures and then coming to Google and to YouTube to figure out why did that happen? Because I thought I did the right thing, but this sucks. What did I do wrong? Then you come back to YouTube, and that's where you're doing your research from there, if you really, really want to put it to use. But the one thing, take more pictures, man. Bottom line, okay? Let's see. Carl Taylor, another name. Yeah, really good. Weekly Imogen. I'm familiar with her. Not a big fan myself. But again, you know, everybody's got their own taste, okay? Yeah, Trevor, you like her because, like, you know, you're a Brit too. I know how that goes. So, Doreen, Patreon is awesome. Thank you. And hey, I forgot. If you join Patreon and you come to our Friday night Zoom chats, almost every week we get a tour of Barbados. Doreen is from Barbados. And Doreen, she's a sweetheart, but she has this little subtle thing that she does. It's kind of like rubbing it in like I'm in Barbados and you're not. So every week when we start the Zoom chat, sure enough, Doreen is like walking around on the beach or wherever, and there's palm trees and there's all these beautiful scenes, so that she can find a nice, comfortable spot to sit and participate in the Zoom chat that we're doing. So, Doreen, I will tell you, while it's great to have those tours, you really need to talk to the Tourism Bureau in Barbados and get them to hire you for doing those tours, okay? So, Cinnamon Girl, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I promise I am going to be doing some videos coming up. It's going to be a little closer to the fall, but coming up on kind of how I do all my image management and that kind of stuff. I will tell you it's super, super, super simple. It's really basic, but the best part of this is I can find any image I've taken in the last 20 years, and I can find it in less than 3 minutes. Really, really easy, okay? Jay Sharp, why don't many photographers, especially newbies, use a large depth of field? Bokeh is nice, but it's getting repetitive. Why scout a great place to shoot only to make everything out of focus? Jay, you're asking me that question? Have you ever watched any of my videos? I'm sorry, I know that's mean. So, Jay, you know, I think that a lot of what happens, Kelly, thank you very much. I'll see if I can get you some time-lapse advice here. So, Jay, back to your question. I think, to be fair, you know, without like taking any shots at anybody here, one of the things that most photographers do, I did it, when you first start out, is you find a photographer whose work that you like, that you admire, it connects with you on some level. And so obviously you copy it. And I don't mean copy in a bad way. I mean, you know, what do they say? You know, imitation is the most sincere form of flattery, right? So you try to achieve that. When I was younger, like teenager, there was a very famous photographer who I believe is still alive today. His name is Peter Turner. I loved his work for the bright, bold colors and the frequent geometric shapes that he used. Another one of my early visual influences when I got into fashion and working with models was a photographer who, for I believe like 17 years, was the only photographer to shoot the covers of Cosmopolitan magazines. His name was Francesco Scavullo. He was very big on bright, bold colors and also very big on symmetry and kind of shapes and lines in his images. I loved his work. So I tried to do what they do. So, right now with the internet, when something becomes popular, it spreads like wildfire really, really fast. That's cool, actually. But indeed, unfortunately, what happens is people get too settled in on accomplishing a technique that they overlook the fact that there are now 10,000 other people doing that exact technique. And what they realize is they haven't really learned anything. They've learned how to do that technique that 10,000 other people are doing. So, yeah, the super shallow depth of field, and believe me, Jay, the big thing now, if you haven't noticed it, it's that super shallow depth of field shot with a 400 millimeter lens. So you can shoot portraits from 50 feet away. Like, go figure. There's a bunch of photographers doing that now. I'm not going to drop any names, but honestly, it's lame. And I know that's going to piss some people off. Sorry. Here's why it's lame. Number one, the visual effect that they get, like literally you see a full-length picture of a person standing like, in this walkway. And at first glance, it's like, whoa, kind of cool. But then you realize the person looks like they were cut out with a pair of scissors and just pasted there. Which, the point is, you could do it in a studio faster, easier, not have to deal with the heat, not have to deal with wind, not have to deal with people, any other crap. You could walk around with your iPhone, shoot the backgrounds that you want, turn them into the same kind of blurry background, and then photograph a person in the studio at the same camera height, so you've got the same perspective, and put them into the scene and have the same picture. Real simple, okay? There's no rocket science behind it. So, but that's like the big thing that everybody's into now. I'm seeing tons of that happening, and every time I see it, I'm just like scratching my head. And it's always the same group of guys that are like chasing each other. And, to me, it makes no sense. When you're photographing people, for me, and it comes down to be clear, it comes down to why do you take the pictures? So I have never chased photography to be the best. Because I'm never going to be the best. That's not a modesty thing. That's just like, it's real. I'm not the best, period. I'm passionate about it. I love it. But why do I do it? Photography is a key. Photography opens a door for me to be able to interact with people that I would not otherwise have the opportunity to interact with. I've gotten to interact with presidents, movie stars, pop stars, you name it. I got to photograph Princess Diana when she was still alive. All of those things. Photography allowed me to do that. So I don't care about being the best. I care about having the experience. Shooting a person with a 400 millimeter lens when it's meant to be like a portrait or a fashion picture, well, what's the point? Because what kind of experience are you having at that point? You're not having any interaction with them. So, yeah, I don't get it. But, hey, the people that are doing it, if they love it, then good for them, So, Kelly Benz, do I have advice for trying time-lapse photography? Kelly, I love you, so I gotta be completely honest with you. I've done time-lapse photography 3 times in my entire life. All 3 times, it's done with an iPhone. My resource, YouTube. That's it. I will tell you this much, though. I have done a fair amount of reading about time-lapse and that. When I first started this YouTube thing that I'm doing now, I was actually originally going to model my videos after Casey Neistat and do them a little bit more vlog style. I'm really glad I didn't go that direction, but that's what I was thinking. So I was doing a lot of research and reading on time-lapse and that kind of stuff. The biggest thing I learned while I was doing that is have an end result in mind, meaning how long do you want the finished time-lapse to play out? If you're shooting it as video, if you want a 5-second clip, then it's real easy to do the math backwards to figure out how long you need to shoot your time-lapse for. So you don't just want to run a time-lapse randomly and then try and make something out of it later. So with video, you really do have to do kind of a lot of forward thinking before you shoot. So that's really the big thing with that. But honestly, I wish I could give you a little bit more input than that. But don't worry, I owe you one when you come up with another question. It's kind of in my lane. All right. So let's see. Stefan Ski, don't forget the flash for the fair. Ask people to pose for you. Permission is always appreciated and respected. 24/70. So I got to be honest with you, Stefan. I would not agree with that. So if it's worked for you, cool. Seriously. So number one, asking people to pose, no, screw that. They're dressed up in costume in a Renaissance fair. You don't ask to pose because pose is a 4-letter word. When people pose, they look stiff. It looks manufactured. It doesn't look real. A lot of the people at the Renaissance fair, they're not only in costume, but they are actors. They are there acting, portraying characters. Let them do their thing and shoot it. Stay out of their way. That's definitely the way that I would go with. And to shoot raw and medium JPEG, once again, that's what works best for you. Me personally, Stefan, I have no point behind shooting raw and medium JPEG. Like, what's the point? Okay? Get a computer that can handle your files and shoot raw. Done. It's that simple. I don't need 2 of every file because what am I going to do with that medium JPEG? Stick it online? Well, if I stick it online, I'm still not processing it the same as I'm processing my raw files. So there's no value to me. And as I mentioned before, go with a wide angle, go with a telephoto. So that 24 millimeter is great for the wide angle. The 70 millimeter length in those, yeah, it's a zoom. So they're going to come in handy from time to time. But if you really, really, really want to perfect your shooting skills, I dare you, walk into the Renaissance Fair with a 24 and a 200, nothing else, and shoot. You will pick out some killer pictures that day, okay? Casper, thank you so much for the super chat here. Let's see. So 1, you only have the handy 50, no flash only. That's fine. Should you upgrade the lens and should you buy a flash? So as far as, should you upgrade lens? That's going to be a matter of when you can afford to upgrade your lens and if you can afford. And then as far as which lens, it really depends on what you want to be able to achieve. Do you want to take in more area? From up close, or do you want to work at a further distance? And then as far as the flash goes, kind of the same thing, Casper. I wouldn't buy a flash because somebody says you need a flash. Ever! That's kind of like, unfortunately, why I jumped on Stefan's comment. I mean, again, that's why I preface my response to Stefan. If it works for him, awesome. But to say to somebody, yeah, do it this way, do it that way, do it this way, that's horrible. If you guys noticed, when I answered the question about the Renaissance Fair, I said, well, this is what I would do, and this is why. Okay? So you have to give the why. So going back to your question here, Casper, you buy a flash when you need a flash. If you're finding that you're winding up in situations where you're trying to do lighting and you're having to push your ISO too high, or you're just not able to get light that is flattering, then it's time to start looking at a flash. But you don't want to just say, oh yeah, let's get a flash because everybody gets a flash. Let me go buy a really expensive one. You got to be really, really careful with that. Okay. So let's see. Clonedman, what do you think about the choice of learning business and social media versus delegate and pay for the business social media stuff? Learn first paying time, or pay and learn in the process. So I am a big believer in know-it-all. I don't mean be a know-it-all. I mean do your own social media, do your own website, all that stuff. 99.9% of you out there can use a templated website like format.com. Not Squarespace. Squarespace sucks because everybody's using it, so you look like just like everybody else. Companies like format.com, much nicer setup, much less expensive, and you definitely don't want to be using that free crap like Weebly and Wix junk, period, okay? But you should be doing your own social media. Yeah, if you get to the point where you take your business and you turn it into something more than just being a photographer, like a Sal Cansada out in St. Louis, okay, who's publishing a magazine and he's doing stuff for Phase 1 and he's traveling all over the world. Okay, so at that point, hire somebody to do your social media. And I'd be willing to bet actually him and his wife do a lot of it themselves. But he's got people working for him, some of which I'm sure help out with that social media. But otherwise, no, I'm a big fan of learning it. If you get your business to the point where you can afford to hire people to do it, good for you, then do it. But how are you going to supervise people to do it if you don't know how to do it yourself? Even if you hire an outside company, how do you know they're doing a good job if you don't know how to do it yourself? So once again, that's why professional photographers are so stupid. Once you make that decision, the rules change. You need to know that stuff. You need to take the time and learn that stuff. Really, really important. So Dave Bullen, any advice on becoming a teaching photographer? Dave, do me a favor. It's going to take you like about 160 seconds before you can answer. Again, thank you, by the way, for the super chat. But I want you to type into the chat window, Dave, as soon as you are able. I'll make sure that I stay here until you can type it in. How many years have you been shooting professionally? type that in for me and then I'll answer your question, okay? Randy Nazario, when the term step up or step down is used with regard to f-stop, I'm confused as to which settings the term step up or increase size, step down, decrease size. So actually, I don't use the term step up. I've never used that when it comes to aperture. Refer to stops. So you stop your lens down or you open your lens up, okay? They're reversed. It's physics, so it's got to be a little confusing. So with regards to apertures, the larger the number, i.e. f22, the smaller the hole, which means the less light that is going to reach the lens. The smaller the number, i.e. 1.8, the bigger the hole, so the more light that will reach the lens. So what you do need to learn, though, Randy, is you need to learn the exposure triangle. You need to learn how one stop via aperture, meaning going from 5/6 to 8, how that translates to going from 1/125th to 1/60th in shutter speed. Because if your initial exposure is 1/125th at f8, or excuse me, at f5.6, 1/125th at 5.6, and you decide you want to shoot at f8, you now have to adjust your shutter speed to 1/60th of a second. Or you adjust your ISO. So it's important to know that going from 100 ISO to 200 ISO is the equivalent of one exposure stop. So that's where the exposure triangle comes in. But the step up, step down thing, that's, I think you're mixing terms a little bit there. So yeah, it would be stops, and stopping down or opening up is what you're doing. So let's see what we've got here. Troy Hall, velour. Who's asking me about velour? What is the best material for backdrop? So actually, Amanda, that's not correct. It's not that I like velour. Back up, Troy. No, my favorite backdrops are vinyl and paper. Those are my favorite backdrops. I have a video, Amanda. If you go to my YouTube channel and search, use the little magnifying glass, search for backdrops, you will find that I have a video about using velour material that you can purchase at a fabric store for like $3 to $4 a yard. I only ever buy it when it's on sale, but it works awesome for backdrops. And you can get away with using it for full-length shots as long as you're not doing anything really wide. I have another video that my favorite color backdrop is gray, and for that I use paper and vinyl always, okay? More often than not, I'm using backdrops that are 9 feet wide, which you can't reasonably get material in that. So, but if Amanda, if you're looking to get your first backdrop ever, I would encourage you to potentially try the velour thing. In fact, here, let me switch over real quick. This is my YouTube channel, Amanda. If you go all the way up the top, if you scroll down the first page, way down to this playlist for DIY photography stuff, you'll have to click the see more button, but this is the video you're looking for right here, DIY backgrounds and portable background stand. That will tell you all about the velour. And if you're just getting started and you're shooting portraits and that kind of stuff, then the velour stuff would be a great way for you to start because it's also inexpensive. So I would encourage you to consider that. Okay. All right, let me scroll back down here and see if I've got the answers to the questions that I was looking for. Dave, I'm still waiting on your answer, so type that in wherever you can. Sorry, Troy. It wasn't bad advice. I just wanted to get the context there, Troy. Don't worry. I'm not mad at you. You're fine. So let's see. Mark J, any advice on getting people to come to my workshop? Stefan, man, you are like an expert here. Why don't you like take over the show, dude? So start with your value proposition and make sure your value proposition is greater what you're charging for. Did you take a business course to learn that? Okay. Mark, listen, obviously, no offense, but I'm not going to teach you for free on YouTube how to market a workshop. Number one, if you're asking me that, I have a feeling you probably shouldn't be teaching workshops. Okay. If you want to learn how to market your workshops, I offer consultations that are 1000% transparent. In other words, I don't hold anything back. I will teach you anything you want to know. All you got to do is visit my website. Once you're there, click on the Learn from Joe, and And the first link is video consultations. And you can schedule a consultation with me, and I will gladly help you out. But that's not anything that's going to help people learn how to take good pictures. Okay. Michael T, what web hosting site do you recommend? Format.com. If you're looking to do a templated website so you don't have to do WordPress and all that kind of stuff, Format.com, absolutely the best. Very reasonably priced. They specialize in websites that are designed for creatives and photographers. Their interface, the way you build the sites and manage the sites and everything that you do there, 10 times easier than Squarespace. And the best part of it is you don't have 50 million people using it like Squarespace. So in other words, your website's not going to look the same as everybody else's. And their sites are much easier to customize than Squarespace. So that's what I would encourage you, okay? All right, so Dave Bullen, 3 years of photography, 10 plus touching and graphic design. So your question was, any advice on becoming a teaching photographer? Yeah, my sincere advice, Dave, and I don't mean to sound like a jerk here, but talk to me in about 30 years. That's my advice. I mean, you know, you got to put things in perspective, gang. So you guys, I know you all spend a lot of time on YouTube. You all watch a lot of different photographers. So Cinnamon Girl, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate that. The problem that you have is that there are, you know, photographers on YouTube that are building massive followings with like 3 and 4 years experience. They're also not making any money. And I'm not going to name any names because I've just described about 5 of them. 5 of them that I know many of you watch. Okay? So, you know, at the end of the day, the idea that you've been shooting for 3 years and you want to be a teaching photographer, you just want people to know your name. No offense. I'm not trying to offend you, but that's what that means to me. Okay? I don't care about people knowing my name. I care about the fact that I spent 40 plus years with a camera. I've been that lucky. I'm not going to be able to do it that much longer because I won't be around forever. So I want to give back. When I was a young photographer, I've talked about it many times. I have a video coming out that actually is about my career path. When I was a young photographer, I had a lot of people that did very, very small things for me in their lives. But they had a huge impact on my ability to progress and to learn. And the one thing I've done and done very, very well and very effectively is throughout my career, I've really tried to pay it forward. Very, very much so. With interns, with helping, with teaching. Even today, yeah, I get paid a lot of money to go and teach at a big photography event. But if a local camera club calls me up and says, hey, we can only pay you $50 to come and do a talk, I'm there, hands down. I have no problem with that. In fact, local camera clubs here in the Allentown area, several of them will attest to the fact that I've gone and I've done workshops for them at no cost so that they could get some money in the bank to solidify what they're doing and to be able to grow their club. So, you know, it's about the greater good, okay? So Information Academy, I don't only reply to those who donate money. That's a really unfair statement, Information Academy. Number one, if you've paid attention, there have been questions after questions after questions that have gone by. Number two, I've answered a boatload of questions tonight for people that did not pay money. So if you want to go ahead and retype your question, because on principle now, I'm sorry, Information Academy, I'm not going to go back and look for your question since you're whining. But if you want to repost your question, when it comes up, I'll go ahead and I'll answer it, okay? So now, Linda, when you're retouching a photo, do you generally stick to the same things? For instance, sometimes filters can look amateurish. Well, when I'm retouching a photo, first of all, I don't use filters. So let's be clear. Filters are not bad when filters are used properly. The right way to use a filter is not like on Instagram, I like Clarendon, click, poof, there it is, done. No, that's not how you use a filter. Understand that filters are presets. That's all they are. So if you want to use a preset to kind of get you close to what you're after, but then you're going to adjust it and manipulate it, great. But no, Linda, I mean, no two pictures are the same. So every picture is going to be a little bit different. You know, I have kind of a standard workflow that I use. And if you want to know about my workflow, Linda, go back and watch the videos that I have that are called Images Reimagined, where I've taken someone's photo and I've redone like my version of their photo. Because I talk a lot about kind of my standard basic workflow in those. So I do kind of outline that. But doing Photoshop on a picture is not using a filter. Sorry, it's much more than that if you want to be doing great work, okay? So let's see. Mandy, so you saw the gray video. Awesome. Yeah, so look for the one that's got the velour backgrounds, okay? Let's back up here. Marcos, any thoughts about the HDR effect? Marcos, considering that I am a people photographer, in that context, the HDR effect sucks. Now, does that mean like, oh my God, you can never use it? Is it a rule? No, it's not a rule, but let's face it, it's the HDR effect is not flattering. So, you know, maybe if you're like photographing some really like aged cowboy and he's in this really rough, you know, setting with wood and all that stuff, and you want to get like an HDR effect just for effect, that could be kind of cool. But when you factor in the kind of work that I do and the stuff I teach about, no, the HDR effect is not going to be flattering to anyone, you know, in that sense. So let's see, backing up here. The best thing a photographer can do is invent something new and not copy others. Yeah, but you know, Mark, in order to invent something new, you've got to copy others. Nobody's that good. Along the way, you're going to copy others. It's how you learn, and that's okay. You just don't build a career on the back of somebody else. That's the point, and that's really kind of what I was referring to, gang. So it looks to me, correct me if I'm wrong, gang, but wait, okay. Who was doing the whining back here? Was it Information Academy? So, oh, okay. So Information Academy, you just wanted to complain about a misperception, really? So I'm sitting here feeling guilty, and I'm going back to this thing like, I missed this poor dude's question. Seriously, man? Like, come on. You know, go find somebody else to troll. Like, what's the point, okay? So Casper 7200s or 70 to 200 millimeter lenses are great lenses. Just make sure that that's actually what you need. Don't do it because somebody said that's what you should take, okay? So let's see here. Dave, you can care less about name recognition, but you enjoy helping. Yeah, you know, Dave, I mean, it sounds to me, based on your experience level, you'd be better off teaching retouching stuff. But, you know, then you also have to look at it, especially if YouTube's in your thought process, Dave. Here's the one thing I will tell you. When I started this YouTube thing full-time last year, I had one very, very clear focus, and that was, what do I do different? There's a ton of photographers out there on YouTube, okay? And just a different personality, in my opinion, is not enough. It's like, what can I offer that somebody else doesn't? So that's why my whole thing became the hows and the whys. I've been taking pictures for so damn long. I've picked up a lot of tricks and a lot of habits and a lot of things that really help along the way. So there's not a lot of people that do that. In fact, there's nobody else that really does that as their primary focus. So that became my niche. So the key with any of it, Dave, even if you're not doing YouTube, even if you're just offering workshops, what do you, and this goes back, somebody talked about value proposition. So just to throw them a little love here, this is the value proposition. What do you bring to the table as a value proposition? Understand that you could be the greatest Photoshop retoucher in the world, the greatest photographer in the world. That doesn't make you the best teacher in the world. I've said this before. I'm kind of proud of it, but I'm also disappointed. One of the things that I've learned the most in the last year is that I'm probably a better teacher than I am a photographer. That's kind of bittersweet, but at the same time, I'm very proud. I'm proud that now that I'm at a point in my life where I want to teach and I want to give back, that I'm able to do it as well as I can. So, you know, that's the thing. But to just do what everybody else is doing is, you know, not ultimately going to get you anywhere. Okay? All right. Anybody else here that I missed and a question? Linda, you know, I have a feeling, Linda, that was not the answer you were looking for about the filters. So, you know, I know you're in my Facebook group. Maybe, you know, give me a little bit more detail, you know, kind of break that down a little bit, and I'll try and be more specific for you. Ben, so we're going to call this the last question for the night here, gang. Where's a good place to purchase your paper or vinyl backdrops? So I'm going to give you guys a cool little tip, all right? In terms of price for paper backdrops, let's go there. And by the way, gang, this is going to vary a little bit in like Europe and that, so I apologize for those of you overseas, but for here in the US, it's usually split between Amazon and B&H or Adorama. Check all three, always. And I hate to tell you guys, listen, you know, B&H, it's the holy grail, right? But today, when you're making a purchase of any kind of photography gear, if you're not checking B&H, Adorama, and Amazon, and for that matter, even if you're not checking more of your local regional dealers like Hunt's in New England or like Midwest Photo out in Ohio, you're really making a mistake. You need to check them all, okay? But for the paper stuff, that's where I go. For vinyl, there's a couple options. So it depends on what you want and what you're willing to do. The best vinyl backdrops that I've found come from Tennessee, from a company named Denny Manufacturing, D-E-N-N-Y Manufacturing. Now here's the trick. They're stupidly expensive. But there's a but. So since you're all going to go look up Denny Manufacturing tonight when we get offline here in a few minutes, sign up for their email newsletter. They will send you a newsletter like once a week with sale information and notices about new products. You'll need to go for about 3 months. Now maybe you'll get lucky and it'll show up next week. But about every 3 months, they put their vinyl backdrops on sale. The white ones a lot. And they put them on sale really, really great prices with really, really inexpensive shipping, okay? Theirs are the thickest, the heaviest, the most durable that I've ever found. That being said, if you're okay with going with a slightly cheaper, and when I say cheaper, I mean thinner and lighter vinyl backdrop, you can go to Amazon and get like a Neewer one or a Cowboy Studio one. And they're a ton cheaper. 2 important things though. One of them I'll go ahead and answer for Clint James here. Clint James, the benefits of vinyl backdrop, they don't, when people trip on them, they don't tear, they don't crease, they don't crinkle. You can wipe them off and clean them. So you buy them once, and as long as you put a little effort in to take care of them, they last forever, okay? That being said, for all of you, if you're using your backdrops on light stands, don't buy vinyl. The vinyl backdrops are very heavy. So you're going to want to mount them from a ceiling and, you know, have them solidly mounted. Otherwise, they're just not really practical because they are heavy. So that would be the thing. Van photos, any nude photo tips? The fewer the clothes, the better the picture. Sorry. Not that I'm going to get into it at this point, Van, but I'll tell you what, seriously. Look me up on Vimeo. In fact, here, let me see if I can get you guys my profile address really quick. If you go to my profile on Vimeo, I do have a few videos about shooting fine art nudes, okay? So here, I'll give you guys the link right there. So you guys can check that out later. That's where you'll find my nude stuff. So other than that, gang, thank you all so much for stopping by tonight. Thank you, Mother Nature, for not making the power cut out. I really thought for sure we were not going to get through it. Anand, would vinyl gray be the best option? Absolutely, man. And the vinyl grays are awesome with doing the colored gels for light and that, like super, super awesome. And by the way, Anand, I saw that you finally just commented, which means you only just got out of bed. Anand's in like Australia, New Zealand, one of those places like way down there. It's about time you got up and showed up and did some photography stuff. So, hey, listen, gang, as always, please have a great week. Get out there. Take lots of pictures. I'll be back here next Monday. For those of you that live in New York City, I'm going to be in New York the end of this week, wandering around. See if you can find me. But until then, gang, you know the drill. Please remember these words. Thanks for watching another live episode of TogChat. Now go pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot, it's your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.